think so. I think it's important to realize that that it's not about heroes. It's about movements. Movements are what change things, and we have that hero mythology at our peril, because we also have these processes of holding up these heroes, lionizing them, saying, "See, these people are extraordinary. They're different from us," and that gets us off the hook. If we say these people are extraordinary and we're normal, then it's their job to fix stuff, and it's not our job. And I think that's what the great Catholic activist Dorothy Day, who was one of the founders of the Catholic worker movement, Dorothy Day said, "Don't call us saints. We don't want to be dismissed that easily." And I think maybe that's what she was getting at, you know? If you call us saints, if some people are the ones who change things and the rest of us hang out and wait for them to, then it's not incumbent upon us to judge ourselves by examining these other examples. You know, they're special. And what's ironic is that after we hold them up and lionize them, then we discover they're human and we tear them down for being flawed. You'd think that at that point we would say, oh, they're flawed like we are, so maybe we should get to work too. But we don't. We say, see, they're flawed. So all that do-gooder stuff, that's all bunk. You know, there's nothing to that. That's ridiculous. And so we get ourselves off the hook again. With the exact contravening evidence, we still get ourselves off the hook. And we have a lot of tricks to immobilize ourselves. And so that's kind of a lot of what I'm working on these days when I'm speaking to groups, is trying to challenge some of those mythologies that we use to immobilize ourselves rather than take action. You know, I grew up in a house where you're only allowed to complain about something so long before you get to work to fix it, you know? And I think that's kind of common sense, but of course common sense can be a little bit uncommon. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so in your work you're doing, explain more, what is peacemaking? What is it, and why is it important for us?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of misunderstandings out there about what peacemaking is. And of course, when I say misunderstandings, I mean understandings that are different from mine, because of course different people can have different opinions about these things. But from my perspective, peacemaking isn't at all about stopping conflict. And that's a big misunderstanding. It's about doing conflict in ways that are constructive rather than destructive. The idea of having a world without conflict it's unimaginable. It's ridiculous. We'll always have conflict between us. But we can do conflict in ways that create community and that help us to know each other better and have more tolerance for different viewpoints and still find a way forward together and make decisions together, some of which we won't be happy with, but we can move forward in love and respectfully. That's possible. That's not Pollyanna. And of course that's always the charge with peacemakers, is that it's naive. You know, you think that you can go out there and fix the world, you know. And when I talk about changing the world, yeah, here, try this, Claudio. Next time you run into a friend in the grocery store and somebody says, "What have you been up to?" You know, look at them with a straight face and say, "Oh, I'm changing the world." Well, that's what they say. They laugh, right? Or they find something really urgent in the produce aisle that they have to attend to because you've gone off the deep end.
That's right.
But that's because they're being sloppy with their semantics. When I say change the world, people hear fix the world. And that's a different conversation.
Right.
If you think you can fix the world, you are naive. You're dreaming. But it's not naive to think you can change the world. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's completely naive to think you could possibly be in the world and not change it. Everything you do changes the world, whether you like it or not. So the question becomes, which changes are you going to make? And do those changes matter? And I talked about that a little bit earlier. You know, the small changes often add up, not always, but all the big changes are made up of small ones, many of which are determinative, which is to say that the larger change couldn't happen without the smaller one. So the small efforts matter, and we've got to get in the game in small ways. When I'm doing these kind of talks, I like to end by asking people, okay, don't pick the best, the most important issue, but just tell me the first one that comes to your mind when I say, what's really bugging you about your world? Maybe your family, maybe your church, maybe your school, maybe your state or your nation or whatever. What's really bugging you? And then the next question is, what's one small thing you can do about it? One really little thing. Don't make it too big, because then you won't do it. What's one small thing? What's one letter you can write? What's one book you can read? And I think Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. It's not about how we fix the world, it's about how we change it. It's not about how we bring about world peace. You know, this is always the theme, Claudio, and I take issue with my dearly beloved friends who work this line a lot, because I think it's a little bit misguided and can be destructive. People say, is peace possible? And the answer, of course, is yes, peace is possible. And I want to say no. No, it's not about achieving placidity. I want to say more peace is possible. The question isn't can we fix it. The question is, can we do any better than we're doing right now? I think we can do better than we're doing right now, and I think it's worth the effort.
Wow. Yes, and that reminds me of Heraclitus, who said that harmony lives in tension.
Wow, I
So
haven't heard that. That's great.
that is exactly what you're saying, right?
Right.
That's what peacemaking, right? Is not to avoid the contention or the tension, but
Not at all.
but to live in harmony amidst that tension, right?
And that's the irony of peacemaking, is that it requires you not to step away from conflict, which is what people who don't get peacemaking think it's about running away, because they're only thinking in the dualistic paradigm of fight or flight.
Right.
They're not thinking about the third way. Peacemaking is the third way. It's neither fight nor flight. It's staying present, non-violently, in love, and engaging the conflict, but ruling out destruction as you do it.
So then, explain more. What is this non-violent way of responding?
Well, there's so many examples. One is in the book. You know, these folks, it's very natural when somebody comes to town to have a Klan rally. This is a hateful message. It's destructive. What they stand for is inherently destructive. So it's very natural to respond with fight or flight, to either want to go there and beat them up, run them out of town, shout them down, something, or to just run away. Like, you know, I don't even want to talk about that. That just freaks me out. I don't even want to go there, right? So those are very natural responses. What the clowns came up with was the third way. They showed up. They weren't hateful. They did make some fun, but importantly, they didn't make fun of the Klansmen. They made fun of their silly ideas. The ideas were silly, so they treated them like silly ideas, right? And I think that's an important example. You know, Dr. King said the problem with violence is that it adds darkness to a night already devoid of stars.
Wow.
You know, if we respond to violence with violence, we run the risk of the worst defeat. The worst defeat isn't to lose to your enemy. The worst defeat is to become them and strengthen their numbers.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the question is, what pile are we going to add to today?
Right.
You know, and I think, you know, the other charge, of course, with people who are spouting stuff like this is, so you're up on a mountaintop and you're so perfect. And let me just be abundantly clear that those of us, all my friends who are working on these peace issues, we don't think we're perfect. We don't think each other are perfect. We think that flawed people are who God uses to bring about the kingdom. Like, we are in our brokenness. Here's my deal. I get it wrong every single day. And some days I also get it right. My good days, I get it right and wrong. Those are my good days. But I think God uses that. And you look through the Old Testament prophets, every single one of them. Find me a prophet that wasn't a bonehead in one way or another, you know, that didn't do something really disturbing at some point, or have some basic fundamental flaw. And our response to a call from God, I really relate to those call stories in the Old Testament. I've found as I've studied them a little more, because God says, hey, I need you to do this. There's this problem, and you need to actually get involved and address it. And pretty consistently, the response is, not me. But not only not me, it's some expression of inadequacy. Not me, I'm too young. I'm a woman. I don't even talk right. You want my brother. There's something. There's just always something like that. To which God usually responds with some form of, I'm God. I've thought this through, right? You know, and yet that is my response. I see a problem and I think, I can't take that on. I don't have what that takes. And yet God uses us in our brokenness. That's how it really works. That's the good story, you know. It's about our moving forward in our brokenness, and not refusing to move forward.
Wow.